Hello
Mm.
everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is Hibiscus, or I'm in Hibiscus, or Yusuke Hibiscus, or whatever you want to call me with. You're currently listening to my podcast, which is Hibiscus Cafe Break. This podcast will feature international fans. I will be letting them plug in their favorite thing about Takarazuka. And I will do some research beforehand and we will be discussing it for each episode. I have Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr. If you haven't followed, I suggest that you do if you want to have more Yuzuka content, which my handle is YUZUKAHIBISCUS. On Twitter, I also have a new account for establishing some news and text links related updates, which you can find on Updates of Rei, which is UPDATESOFREI. Also, subscribe to my channel and like my video if you like this episode. Please note that the name Hibiscus Cafe Break is with due respect to the original show Takarazuka Cafe Break, and this is a fan-made podcast with no intention of receiving commercial revenue, rather to promote Takarazuka review in a casual and informal manner. I do not own any of the resources that may be featured, and any mentions of the shows or seto are subject to copyright from Hankyu Railway, Takarazuka Review, and Takarazuka Creative Arts Publications. Without further ado, let the podcast begin. Hello, welcome everyone back to Hibiscus Cafe Break. This is the 8th episode and 9th video. And today we are going to have our second guest here. So before I begin, allow them to introduce themselves. Could you tell us your name, where you're from, how you became a Takarazuka fan, and something like that for the audience members to know about you?
Yeah, hi guys. My name's Ali and I'm from America. I originally got into Zuka because of my grandma, but technically I didn't really have any interest in it until I found a TikTok about graphs and Kageki magazine. So from there it kind of just was a rabbit hole into this thing that pretty much consumes my life now.
Nice. Okay, so maybe before we start, we can have some warm-up. So could you share a TMI for today?
TMI for today. Maybe guys obviously can't see it, but on my bed right now, there's like a huge pile of dirty clothes because I'm too lazy to put it in the laundry room. So that's a TMI.
Okay, then maybe you can also ask me a question as
Mm, Well, okay. So at the time of recording, there's been a lot of pretty big Takarazuka, oh my God, Takarazuka news. What is the most or like what is the performance of 2024 that you're looking forward to most so far?
okay. Looking forward to most so far. It's actually interesting because most of the news they focus on the restage of the Rose of Versailles from Snow Troupe and also Final Fantasy from Cosmos Troupe. And actually, I am actually interested in the Moon Troupe one. It's called Eternal Voice and it's written by Haruhiko Sensei. Not my favorite director, but surprisingly the plot caught me through, so that was interesting. And also, actually want to see how a Takarazuka specials in 24 in summer would look like because that seems exceptional. At least I haven't heard of a summer Takarazuka special. So yeah, looking forward to that too. And maybe if you don't mind, could you help us say the title call, please? Thank you.
Hibiscus Cafe Break open.
Okay, so that's basically some basic questions. But for our episode today, what are we talking about, Ali?
Oh, great thing you asked. So today we're talking about the lovely Aizuki Hikaru of the 93rd class. Yes, applause, applause. So Aichan, as her nickname is, was nibante of Hoshigumi up until around late 2021. And today we're just gonna kind of go through her career, some of her high points, and what specifically about her makes her my oshi.
Yay. So yeah, maybe the first question I have is, so how did you find Ai-chan? Like, and why did you realize and found her and it was like, oh, she's my oshi? What was that main point of life?
Yeah, so it was more than a year ago from today, actually, where the very first Takarazuka performance I ever watched was Elizabeth 2016. And if you don't know, 2016 is when Soragumi did it. And obviously, Aichan was never top star, so it was Asaka Manato, but Aichan did do the role of Lupini. And when I first watched it, honestly, I was like, who is this crazy man? But eventually I came to find out or found out she did a show called Immortal Thorns. And obviously we're going to talk about that later, but Immortal Thorns really was the turning point in making me be like, this is an actress.
Right. To add on to that, Elizabeth 2016 was my second show and I watched it at my school. So I definitely did have like I believe it was also a shock to you, even though these weren't one of my questions, but like Aichan's Zucchini was something very different. It was something
Right.
that really made you feel, oh my gosh, this deranged prisoner, he's
Right.
just insane. Yeah, that was how I felt about it. Definitely
Hmm.
was a strong impression though.
For sure,
So
for sure.
as that was very groundbreaking, what do you think, or how would you comment about her stage presence? What is something on stage that you feel like, oh my gosh, like kyun or attracting to see? Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the beginning of her career, she really leaned into more like comedic roles or even just like princely roles. If you see some of her Soragumi shows, most notably Top Hat, if you want to watch that, that role is great. But I think as she matured as an otokoyaku and became nibante, she really tried to go for these very mature and dark roles. You see that with her death in Romeo and Juliet, and then also as we talked about just previously, Immortal Thorns, I think that's like the beginning of when she really was leaning into that. And those kind of deep, like dark roles, I think she really enjoyed because it was something different. And, you know, not often do you get to do something like that in Takarazuka.
Nice. And I also, because mainly we're going to talk about like her on stage Zuka career. So we definitely talk about like the contrast of roles that she played, like her front half as Soragumi, like as a Soragumi se and also later as a Hoshigumi se. But apart from that, it's also notable to find that Aichan's actually pretty cute off stage, or she's rather shy and actually quite contrastingly different from how she reacts on stage. So yeah, how is that other charm point for you?
Yeah, I think her kind of two-facedness off and on stage is so cute. She has like the the craziest like high pitched voice you would never expect from an otokoyaku who can do such low notes. If you watch her Sayonara show when she does Rudolph, it's just crazy. And although there is one thing that's not voice related that I do love about her off stage, it's her commitment and love of Takarazuka. So she taidaned about 2 years ago now, and in recent interviews, she's been talking about how much she loves Zuka and how much like she wants to still be connected with the stage. And it's kind of pretty evident actually in her OG career where the bulk of her OG activities have been with other OG Zuka actresses, and she's only really done one musical since Taidan. And in that musical, she was also doing an otokoyaku role, which is great because not many OGs who are otokoyaku do that still out of Takarazuka. So honestly, that part of her, that commitment, that love, it's so admirable, and I aspire to also have that same sort of passion for something in my life like that.
True. And if I may also add, like the reason we are doing this iChan special is mostly because, well, Ali's plan worked. Like, okay, she just kind of recommended iChan stuff and it kind of worked. And I just kind of became part-time for like last year for some period of time where I just like asked, are there any iChan coverages? Because I want to translate it. And the TMI I could share about iChan, which is still very funny to me, is how much she loves Takarazuka's Sky Stage. Like
Yes.
there were competitions where she literally aced each question, and I don't even remember what I ate like maybe a week ago, but she remembered like
Yes.
everything that happened in the Sky Stage. Like I would record it 3 times. I was like, that kind of adds on to how much love she has for Takarazuka, but that is also something that was very memorable to me
Yes.
as like
Hmm.
an offstage personality. So yeah, I
Hmm.
think we could start by going into some of her like lead role shows. So first of all is Sanctuary, and that was performed by Cosmos Troupe in 2014. And by that time, she was like I think Ken 7, Ken 8, which means by that
Hmm.
time you're around 7 to 8 years in Takarazuka Revy, and that's like her first full hall lead. So what do you think that means to her? Because obviously every first lead would mean a lot to the Xian themselves.
Yeah. So for Sanctuary, yeah, it was right after she stopped doing Shinjin Koans, and I think the second to last Shinjin she had was a lead. So obviously the pressure was pretty big for her being an otokoyaku with 4 leads under her belt. Um, a small fact that kind of just shows how much the show means to her is that her dog that she adopted while in Takarazuka is named Henry, the lead of Sanctuary. And I think besides the fact that it is one of her favorite roles, as she stated before, it's just one that totally blew me away in terms of expectations of what a Ken 7 or Ken 8 actress could do. Because at this like sort of stage in their career, they're kind of getting to know themselves a little bit more. Like they're not doing Shinjin Koens anymore. They're becoming their own actress. They're not like copying the top star, right? And Sanctuary was a role in which it was such it was it was a bit unique, as she said in your interviews, where she thought, oh, this is like a prince of France or whatever. He's gonna be like chivalrous and princely, but in reality, it's a guy with like super curly hair, like can't take no for an answer, super just like burly. And I think also the fact that she was able to do that show with a very long time friend of hers from the beginning, Reinu Urara. I think this show is just one that both Aichan and I can't forget.
Nice. And yes, as you mentioned, like obviously this was the time where they could create their own stage personality, shape their own otokoyaku for themselves. But there's something that I kind of found interesting is, well, obviously her otokoyaku voice is very deep to begin with, as you just said. And also because this was a role that was obviously more on the masculine side, I would say at least, like even though there might have been pressure from like the previous leads for the newcomers performance, but that those experiences also accumulated to what made this role seem like not something that a Ken 7-8 could deliver. It was seemed like something that it was just a larger role, and you wouldn't even expect that to be the first role. Would you kind of agree on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Aichan also said herself she was very surprised by it. It's like just I'm glad they gave it to her. It was definitely something new, and I'm glad they didn't go with the sort of princely or like melancholic role they had. And it is such a deep performance because it talks about this really harsh time in French history, like a bunch of religious conflict. And I think the fact that her and Urara were able to pull it off so well, despite being so young into their careers, was such an amazing thing in itself.
Yeah, and you mentioned Urara, which actually they have paired up several times, like at least in their
Yes.
Cosmos Troupe era. And they also have been this really interesting pair, which technically not really a love line, but some that fans would really have seen their interaction with, which would be, as we also just mentioned, Elizabeth 2016, where Urara actually played Madame Wolf, and Aichan played the character of Ukini, and they had like some kind of interesting, playful, flirtatious tension. Like, I don't know, it was kind of a short scene, but it was very impactful to watch, wasn't it?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's forever immortalized in a stage bromide for Elizabeth 2016, but the scene between Madame Wolf and Lukini is like such a highlight in Aichan and Urara's sort of fake comedy era. And I really appreciate that Hankyu and the producers at Takarazuka were able to pair them up so much because I think they were really the perfect non-top pairing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because there has been a show, right, where both of them were together, like as like OGs, of course. But then when you see that OG interaction where, even though they're like not otokuyaku or musumeyaku anymore, but sometimes when Aichan compliments and Urara kind of smiles to it, you're feeling like, oh, okay, yeah, we do see the combi candy offered to us, and we
Yes, yes.
do accept it, yes, gratefully. So yeah, so another turn would be Immortal Thorns, which is obviously my first. Yeah, it's also a turning point to me. I think no one who has seen Immortal Thorns would think that it is a normal piece, right? At least in terms of Takarazuka, it is not something very conventional to the love and dreams and hope, all those positive tones. So maybe to start first, like since well, you possibly know a lot about Immortal Thorns, not just the Takarazuka play itself, but its original. So would you want to like introduce a little bit about this play itself first?
Yeah, so Immortal Thorns was Aichan's 2018 Bow Hall lead. It was a bit after Sanctuary, a couple years after, and it was actually a restage of an original show that Haruno Sumire did back in, I think, 2003. And essentially, the show kind of revolves around this man who goes by a bunch of different names, but you mainly know him as Errol Maxwell. And he is a man who has been cursed with limited immortality by his father and the trials he goes through in life, especially with loving a woman who in turn kind of betrays him, and how he goes about the rest of his life dealing with that fact. It is a really, really heavy show. I'd go as far as to say there's probably zero happy moments in the entire show. And there are even moments that really make you uncomfortable. And I think it was such a hard show to do and such a hard show to give to someone, especially coming from a talented top star like Osa. It's just crazy that they gave that to Aichan, especially only as her second lead overall. So it's a great show, and I think everyone should watch it personally.
True. I think, well, yeah, definitely the most memorable scene would be the last scene in Act One where there was the transformation. Like it was the song was called "The Star Was Born," where essentially Errol Maxwell was stayed in this egg at first, but then when the egg opens, you realize that he was actually dragging as a woman, and then later on, well, became back as Errol Maxwell himself. There were like signature movements where he lifted off the lipstick and just removed everything, but before that, like a second ago, he was still like in his female performance, like fanning. So in this scene, how did you think Osasan's and Aichan's version would have differed, and how is that interesting to compare?
I think Aichan and Osa-san's interpretations of the scene were really different. For one, I felt that I think Aichan's Onayaku voice, or when she was pretending to do drag and pretending to be a woman, the difference between that and Errol's real voice is a lot less distinct in my opinion, just between Aichan and Osa. Like Aichan's was just a bit more muffled, which is honestly fine because in a way the whole scene is really meant to kind of subvert gender expectations. And there's even a scene later in the show where Errol comments that everyone who, comes to see him backstage always wishes there was something different with that performance. And I think that's such an interesting thing they included in the show because although the show Immortal Thorns is technically based on a Czech opera, a line like that doesn't exist in the opera. So it was totally something new to Takarazuka. And I think it's also something that the actors themselves probably thought of. Like, how am I going to interpret this drag scene? How am I going to portray the concept of a new star being born, right? So, in a way, I think Osa's is definitely more concrete and mature, but I think Aichan's sort of had a little bit more play to it. I really do enjoy how she did it and the kind of almost tinge of a smile that you can see on her face as she sings the song.
Yep, I guess this magic really has to be seen by the
Yeah,
audiences themselves.
for
Even though
sure, for
if we
sure.
describe it, you have to like watch the scene itself. But maybe a little correction first. So this Immortal Thorns was performed in Theatre Drama City and also Nippon Senenkan. But it was also interesting because it's not like the traditional Takarazuka theaters or Bohol. It was like a different kind of stage. And obviously stage blocking wise, even though like it's like a different stage. So obviously everything's gonna be different. But I also feel like in such a musical where we really emphasize on the protagonist, like Errol Maxwell, like this immortal entity himself, the company of the Xians as they work together is also very important. So apart from like Aichan's performance, how do you think like the other surrounding factors would have complemented to making this show such a masterpiece?
Oh, I think the blocking really did a lot of hard work in this show because when you look, or just honestly everything. So starting off with the set, let's say, you'll first notice both the set and the costumes, everything in the show is pure white. Just pure white. The only real colors you can see is halfway through the show, which is gold, which ties in with the song itself. And it's like, okay, it's gold, whatever. And then they also make really good use of the color red. And I don't want to spoil too much, but there's really only two scenes where you see the color red, and they're both very, very pivotal moments in the show. One, Hibiscus mentioned kind of previously, but it's with lipstick, and the other one is one that kind of comes as a shock, but at the same time, not really when you consider Errol as a character. And just the use of color is just so strong because the more you see the white, the more you kind of forget that there are other colors in this universe. So I think that's just amazing. The blocking too, there's a scene where when Errol is singing, a bunch of people are seen sort of watching his show kind of in the background. And I think the height of which the actresses are sitting, their emotions that are being displayed, and all those things are totally calculated by the production team and just make her such an eerie presence almost during this act of Errol's show, which is quite cheerful, I suppose, in nature and sound, but just having all these people who have varying degrees of strong emotions towards him in the background, staring at him silently. I think that's just a great visual to have, and you really have to watch the show to see it and understand it.
And this is where we plug in that actually we both translated this version of Immortal Thorns. So
Yes,
yes, after this episode, if you're interested, message me, and yes, I will give you the link. Literally, have it. Watch
yes, please,
watch
for
Immortal Thorns.
free.
Yes, exactly. So the way we did it is we both translated like we each translated an act, and it was kind of interesting because we had like the translation process of how to understand like the language of Japanese itself, but also what does it mean for the whole plot development. So it was very interesting. And yep, stay till the end. We also have like another announcement of which is our second subtitling project. So yep.
Yay.
But anyway, so actually after Immortal Thorns in 2019, there was actually a sudden news, which it of course would not be new to Ali because you've been a fan like after her tie down, but it was the Senka transfer because she was transferred to Senka in 2019 after 10 years in, or like more than 10 years in Soragumi. So what would you think about this transfer in your most honest opinion?
To be honest, I think it was at a time where Hankyu was really using Senka sometimes to just kind of keep random tracked otokoyaku in a sort of hibernation capsule. And I mean, Aichan wasn't even in Senka for a year. So during that period, it's kind of just like a limbo. She like didn't really know what she was gonna do because Serika Toa had transferred into Soragumi, effectively keeping Aichan at a Sanbante position there. And everyone kind of knew, like, she was gonna go somewhere. They just didn't know where yet. So I think Senka isn't necessarily a bad thing per se. I feel like a lot of fans, when they see Senka, they automatically jump to like the worst conclusion ever, which is they're not going to do anything while in Senka. But I mean, Aichan had a Perisai, which was amazing. I love watching that. And she also did I'm pretty sure she also did The Man from Algiers with Rei Makoto during her Senka run as well. So it really comes to show that you can still do things in Senka and the outcome isn't always bad. I really have positive things to say about the Senka transfer only, even though it is kind of weird to look at her biography and be like, why was she only here for a couple months? But yeah, I think it's a great.
I think also especially how Senga has been, like at least for this past half a year, where there have been
Hmm.
so many xians suddenly associated with Senka.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
would have been examples to compare, like, oh, which kind of Senka situation is this? But obviously, I also see like Aichan's Senka transfer as a good thing because later on, like after joining like the Man from Algiers, she actually became like a part of Star Troupe, and then yes, she was in, well, yeah, like the Grand Theatre performance of Romeo and Juliet, which, yeah, Soragumi has never done one. But then right at the point of 2021, she got to play two roles, which is Tibal and Death. So there's like A and B. Which version did you like more? Or yes, you could comment about it.
So A cast was where Aichan was Tybalt, and then B cast was where Aichan was Death. First of all, I feel like this question is like when you ask a mom to pick their favorite child, it's just like, man, I like them both, right? The thing is with Aichan Tybalt, obviously I feel like that one has a lot of strong points given that Tybalt is such a fan favorite character. I think his character can be summed up in a very short way, which is if problematic, why sexy, right? Um, he also has three songs, which is amazing because I love hearing Aichan sing. And one of his songs is one of my favorites as well. The thing is, though, with Death, Aichan has talked so much about loving the opportunity to do switch cast because she loved the interpretation and self discovery kind of what Death means as a character in that show. I mean, it was such a unique interpretation, and I feel like maybe she pulled some things from her time doing Lucchini and Elizabeth from it, where it was so popular and so unique that Aichan's death was a trending term on Twitter, which is crazy that so many people were talking about it. And when you watch her do death in the B cast, you can really tell it is so unique and so different from a lot of interpretations, and there's this overwhelming sense of dread that kind of follows Romeo throughout the show. Even when Aichan isn't there, I was always thinking, oh, when is she gonna pop up next? And like what is she gonna do to him? Because it really is overbearing and just looming around the corner at any time. But I do think her Tybalt is very hot and I appreciate it a lot. And I think the wig looked really good on her. So yeah, I really can't choose, to be honest. And they're all just great.
If I may add, as you mentioned, like obviously there have been like some Soragumi experiences, Lupini or whatever, to like add on to how she wants to shape her Tibal or Death. I do remember that she also mentioned because like the then Soragumi top star Makaze Suzuho, actually she also played Tibal and Death, but the difference is obviously not in the same performance with the switch cast. So I believe that Aichan would possibly have thought this would be an exciting but also challenging thing because you would have to adjust to maybe the first half, because I don't really remember how they swapped it, but at least at some half of the Takarazuka run or the Tokyo run, you would have to be Tibalt or Death. And it's also interesting to see because Death has no dialogue apart from the last, finale when they have to sing their lines. And Tibalt has like a lot of lines which literally show who Tibalt is, and you realize why this character has such, well, I don't know, personality, character, kind of that. So it's interesting to see how Death also has a personality without any dialogue, because it's kind of how the presence or the dance that Aichan adds to it that makes something so ominous. And yeah, obviously it is very interesting to watch. And obviously for some reasons I have watched too many times of the Cafe Break. Do not ask me why, but it is a very interesting research topic that we should all look into. The Takarazuka Cafe Break. Yes. Yeah. So I think we can also talk about, I didn't actually add this, I just remembered though, like apart from Romeo and Juliet, she actually did another show which I want to talk about. It's El Hakon. It's also in Star Troupe.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yes, I want to talk about that, even though I didn't add it in our list of questions. But El Halcon was where she played, I think she was like it was like
Luminous Red Benedict or some weird name.
I mean, yeah, but first of all, the identity, like she was a Harvard law school student, I think. And yeah, I'm a law school student, so I was like, wow. The A in Aichan stands for A grades, law school student. Okay, but later on, she became a pirate. But overall, the last impression I actually have was, oh my gosh, I actually love Aichan in blonde and also in that pirate look, rather than her in the law school student look. But Yeah, I don't know, but that was an interesting role, I feel. Yeah, do you want to say
For
something
sure.
about like, yeah,
I
hot
mean,
color?
it's like such a weird choice. I feel like whoever directed that really wanted Koto to play the main character because Aichan's role in that is actually supposed to be younger than Koto, which is insane because I mean, if you think about it, I'm pretty sure Aichan's a bit older than Koto. I mean, Koto's 95th class, Aichan's 93rd, but usually I always see Aichan as a lot not more mature, but I guess well, yeah, more mature in like the otoko yaku way where Koto can easily play Romeo and no one bats an eye. But if I saw Aichan playing Romeo, I'd be like, I don't know about that one, guys. So I think when she played that role, I was really surprised that she could pull it off very well because I was very convinced of it that she was like this little Harvard, Harvard guy. And then she gets mad that Koto kind of, well, I'm not going to spoil it the show, but she gets mad at Koto and becomes a pirate, right?
Mm.
So I am proud of Aichan for that one, and it was such a fun show to watch, and I'm glad everyone enjoyed it, and it seemed really fun. So
Yep. And then towards the next show, yes, it's Manon, which is like her third lead show, like, and she's a Star Troupe member already.
mhm.
And this is like, yes, unfortunately, it's also one of her like third and last leading show.
Yeah,
But did you think there was any difference in like the Soragumi Aichan versus the Hoshigumi Aichan when she played as her role in like Manon?
yeah. Honestly, I don't know what it was, but it did feel like while watching Manon that there was a sort of switch that kind of flipped in her where I really cannot imagine Aichen doing this role in Soragumi, even though Immortal Thorns and Manon both have some some kind of sense of maturity to them. Manon was just one that was so overwhelmingly filled with romantic love and loss and grief and just all the regrets that come with being so passionately in love. I quite frankly don't think Aichen could have done it while in Soragumi, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. I think Immortal Thorns, because of the lack of a romantic love interest throughout the show, it might have even been easier for her to do it. But with Manon, it's such a passionate love that Arisa Hitomi um like pairs with her in the show. And just like even the ending, every moment Aichan was in Manon, you could really feel she was putting her all into it. And it was almost as if she was thinking like this show is like I need to show people what I've defined as otokoyaku. And I think that's great. And I mean, it is one of those kind of like princely roles, but it also is a show where there are so many mistakes that happen to the characters, and the ending is crazy as well. So I think this was just a really good last stamp, last mark on Aichan's lead career because she had honestly the range of plot and emotions between her three lead shows is crazy. And I'm glad she got to do this.
This show also features another Hoshigumi-se, which eventually you said that you started noticing more, who is called Amato Kano. So what's something special about this rising actress that made you feel this is the one I will also stand?
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's so exciting. I love talking about Kanon, but in Manon particularly, even though there is technically a nibante role, Kanon got the role which is Manon's brother, let's go. And it's just such a great role because it's such a like I don't even know how to say it. Sort of like a delinquent kind of vibe where it's just some guy who like does whatever he wants. And it's such a good role for a young actress to have especially. And I think Kanon did it really, really well. And ever since then I kind of been following her. And I think it helps that right after Manon, they did Yagyu Ninja Scrolls and Kanon was the Shinjin Koan lead for it. So I got to see a little bit of that. And I think oh, I also remember Kanon was Aichen's sort of like right-hand man in Alcon as well. So I'd been seeing them together for a while and I was like, it's quite obvious that I think Kanon really respects Aichen and I love that for her. And I think this year in the Otome as well, Kanan wrote that she would love to do a role that you can play two people at once. And I think that was a reference to Aichan's role in Yagyu Ninja Scrolls, which we can talk about soon. But I love those little references that make me love both of them, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to the first half of our discussion because the episode was too long. So, again, I have to cut it in two. But for the next half, we are going to be talking about her last show in Takarazuka and as well as her post Takarazuka and OG career. So, stay tuned and wait for the next one. Bye.